One is industrial output, and the other is construction activity. And I think both are very good signals in terms of how we see the quarterly numbers going forward. And at this point in time, we still are quite confident, inshallah, that we will be well above 4% for the entire fiscal year. Inflation, we know it's in low single digit, and this is despite floods. The fiscal and the primary surplus. So I think this is very important that when we talk about muashi istihkam, when we talk about macro stability, when we talk about building these kind of internal and external buffers, that when the Prime Minister and the Cabinet decided at the time of the floods which affected us this year, that we are not going to go for an international appeal. And for rescue and relief, we will use our own resources. It's only when you have these kind of fiscal buffers that you can take that kind of bold decision. FBR tax to GDP at 10.2%, which is a very high number, and this number has not been achieved for a very long time. On the debt side, I do want to talk about it because debt servicing is the single largest expense item for the government of Pakistan. And overall, debt to GDP down to 70%, and our average maturity now is over 4.5 years. When this administration started, under Prime Minister's leadership, we were hovering around 3 years. So as we move in terms of extending the maturities, that bunching is gone, and therefore that entire discussion that the government of Pakistan is a desperate borrower, and therefore we have to keep on coming back to the markets is now gradually going away. And the fact that we have been able to do some early debt payoffs, और उसकी वजह से जो interest and markup की जो saving है, जो debt servicing की saving है, you know, that was close to 600 to 700 billion rupees last year, and it's going to be, inshallah, I won't get into the number, but whatever we have budgeted for this year in terms of debt servicing, we will come well below that. The policy rate being at 10.5%, I think, again, it's a very welcome direction that we have moved. Next year. State Bank reserves at a 4-year high, which is now about roughly 2.6 months of import cover. But inshallah, we want to stay with the direction that by the time we close this fiscal year, we should be at about 3 months of import cover, which is a great international marker, and that should help us in terms of further upgradings from the rating agencies. और जो गवर्नर भी या स्टेट बैंक के कहते रहते हैं कि these are high quality reserves because these are not built on debt. It's through open market operations, and therefore the quality of these reserves are very good as well. Remittances, as we all know, has been a great story, and that story actually continues in the first 5 months. And inshallah, if all continues to go in the right direction, we should be over $41 billion of remittance flows this year. And associated with that is also the Roshan digital account, because we are now dealing with 2 different client segments here. So our diaspora, who have done extremely well for themselves, they continue to send us close to $200 million per month in terms of the Roshan digital account, because that is more sort of investment-led discussion. Remittances, most of it is sort of consumption-led discussion. Stable exchange rate. The stock exchange, just when I was leaving the office, I think it had crossed the 175,000 marker. Or isme, of course, it's always a discussion between Wall Street and Main Street, but the new investors, 120,000 new investors, and this rally is indeed and clearly being led also by liquidity, but there are fundamentals and corporate profitabilities which is sort of driving this. And because of that, जिसका जो impact है 26 में, 16 new IPOs expected in 26. These are real companies who want to do capital raising to do either their BMR or further expansions. So that is the real effect in terms of the economic expectation going forward. Registered companies 276,000. इस पहले 5 महीने में 18,000 companies have registered themselves as well. So it's a direct indication, और जो पहले भी कल जो एहसन इकबाल साहब ने जिक्र किया in terms of the GDP growth, I think we are beginning to move in the right direction, and certainly the sectors where we were lagging previously. Next, the structural reforms. I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's about a month and a half back with all our friends from the media and along with my cabinet colleagues, we went into a lot of detail in terms of these structural reforms which are not in the design phase. They are well underway. और उसमें taxation है, people, process, technology, which is in turn being helping us with compliance and enforcement. अगर आज भी, if you've seen the ads in the papers in terms of not only faceless customs, but where customs is now moving on the digitalization side in terms of prior clearing and also going directly into the ports as well. I mean, these are all things which are beginning to make a big difference as we go forward, and this is one area where the Prime Minister himself does weekly stock taking. On the energy side, the two cabinet colleagues are here in terms of governance, in terms of circular debt, in terms of tariffs. I think we have some way to go, but we are beginning to move in the right direction. Mohammad Ali साहब इधर बैठे हैं, मैं इनको हमेशा ये कहता था, one score or one run on the scoreboard, and you have two, and one a very large one, and a very big one, and a very meaningful one, which is the PIA privatization. So well done to you and to your team, and inshallah, through the Cabinet Committee on Privatization and Cabinet Committee on SEEs, we have handed over 24 state-owned enterprises to the Privatization Commission. It includes the discos, includes insurance companies and other assets which are there, and I know advisor privatization is sort of taking that forward. Digital Pakistan, I think, again, this is one where the Prime Minister himself has taken the lead in working with all the ministries in terms of accelerating our energy, our journey. And I always keep on saying, when we talk about digital, it's faster, cheaper, better. We have to look at it from the lens of our citizens and how it's going to help. And under Prime Minister's leadership, the way this journey has accelerated over the last 6 months gives us a lot of hope in terms of 26 and how it's going to make a real difference. Tariff, there's various schools of thought on it, but it's a bold tariff reform that was launched on July 1, and we firmly hope and believe that it's going to be a South Asia, East Asia moment for Pakistan in terms of improving competitiveness for our export industry. Right sizing of the federal government, we continue to move forward in terms of the 43 ministries, 400 plus attached departments, and then there are some very clear decisions which have been implemented in terms of merging of industries, in terms of closing down PWD, in terms of closing down Utility Services Corporation, and the process of winding down pensions for our government colleagues, civil government colleagues. We have now moved to defined contribution in terms of the new entrants. And debt management, I've just already talked about it. We are restructuring our debt management office in a big way so that they can continue to create the alpha, because I think that's very important. It's not only about the policy rate coming down and therefore the debt servicing coming down, the liability management trades that the office is now doing, etc., is helping us with the debt servicing costs, and that's very important because we can then continue to put that money into other sectors which actually require those funds. Next. So these are some of the external validations which came through during the course of this year, starting with the rating agencies. After a hiatus of about 3 years, the 3 rating agencies are aligned in terms of their sovereign ratings and, more importantly, their outlook for Pakistan, and all of them talk about the ongoing reforms under the current administration. If we also look at some of the IFIs, the World Bank saying staying the course on reforms is critical to maintaining growth, and ADB saying that economic reforms and advancing structural reforms by this administration is commendable. Next. These are also some of the independent surveys which have happened, and these are just the surveys over the last few months. So the PwC, because I think that leadership matters, if the top Pakistan CEOs are saying that optimism about economic growth has jumped to 83%. Similarly, Overseas Chamber, which talks about overall business confidence, 22%, up from 11% last time they did the survey, which is double in 6 months. Ipsos confidence and optimism about Pakistan's economic direction is at a 6-year high. So we will continue to look at these surveys as we move forward. Now let's talk about the reform agenda. So I've talked about some of the reforms and the policy reforms which are underway at this point in time. And we are very clear to stay the course in terms of those reforms and now really notch it up in a big way in terms of the institutional reforms, because that is the only way to ensure that we do not get into boom and bust cycles. We do not get into gold rush. We get to a sustainable growth through this reform agenda. So this, the next set of reforms, extensive consultations have taken place with key stakeholders and ministries over the last year or so, and therefore the focus is now on a few themes. Improving market governance to stimulate private capital in growth-oriented sectors, regulatory and tax policy predictability, which is really all about consistency. It is going to be a key driver of growth. Improvement in public financial investment management and prioritizing those areas which stimulate growth. Improved contract enforcement, because I think that's a critical enabler in terms of investor confidence, whether these are local investors or foreign investors. Next. Continuing on our journey with respect to automation and digitization, whether it's FBR or EPAD. So there's more fiscal space available for growth-oriented sectors, and we eliminate essentially discretion from procurement. Double up on the simplification of laws, the regulatory guillotine, and all the discussion which is already underway. We just need to accelerate that journey over the next 1 to 3 years. It will help ease of doing business and certainly lower compliance costs for the private sector, and further improve institutional linkages which are and sort of really connecting all the agencies and departments which are undergoing reforms at this point in time. So there are really 3 core streams. The first one is growth-oriented fiscal and public investment governance. जैसे मैंने जिक्र किया, इसमें public procurement का बहुत important है. We are well on our way. I think the Prime Minister himself will mention some of the statistics in terms of how many agencies and how many departments are already now working through this procurement mechanism. But it's all ensuring that we remain competitive, public funds are saved, and we ultimately it's all about providing the fiscal space and getting the fiscal space. Development spending, I know, sir, Mr. Planning, it's very close to your heart in terms of how we create more fiscal space for more development spending, and certainly growth-focused PSDP. And the rationalization process, which is already underway, I think is going to be a big help on that side. Enhancing market confidence and simplification of regulations, that's theme number 2. So regulatory predictability under the Aasan Karobar Act 2025, and just operationalizing that as we go forward. Value-driven tax policy, I think that's absolutely critical. That what we have done during the course of this year, that we have taken policy out of FBR, so that FBR can really focus on collections, and the tax policy is really driven by economic value considerations, not how we make the math work. So operationalization of this tax policy office in the next year is going to be absolutely critical. And then getting to the real-time information, which will help us with timely decisions and timely execution. And the last one is building trust in legal processes. Already, the law minister is taking a huge lead on that front, but addressing the backlog in special courts, tribunals, AML enforcement, and asset recovery. Just the last bit, how we're going to implement it so that we can build on the current momentum. So under Prime Minister's directions, senior cabinet ministers will continue to supervise implementation of relevant reform areas. Ministry of Finance will act as a secretariat. FCDO will help us with a lean technical unit. And then the consultative process will continue in terms of senior level policy dialogue with academia, think tanks, business representatives, bodies, and civil society, so that we continue to refine and tweak the reform process as we go forward. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And now I will request the Prime Minister to address the audience. Thank you.
𝗙𝗶𝗆𝗰𝗲 distinguished members of the Cabinet, Excellencies, development partners, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon. Today is not just about launching a reform program, it is about reflection and it is about resolve. 2 years ago, when this government assumed office, the economy we inherited was confronting immense challenges. Internationally, Pakistan had been sidelined and not part of the main frame of global economic engagement. Economically, we were struggling. Inflation was around 30%. Reserves were dwindling and confidence had evaporated. Institutionally, the state machinery was confused and in disarray. Ladies and gentlemen, I knew, as did my honorable colleagues, that the challenges were immense. But we also knew, without any ray of doubt, that the task at hand was difficult but not impossible. This was not the first time a PMLN government had been entrusted with pulling Pakistan back from the brink. In 1997, we faced economic sanctions and isolation, yet we stabilized the economy. In 2013, we inherited crippling energy shortages, terrorism, and economic stagnation, but we brought the country back on the track. And when we assumed office in 2024, we knew exactly what lay ahead of us. And there was no doubt that restoring Pakistan's economy would demand hard choices, choices that would not spare our own political constituency. And there could be no shortcuts, no populism, no denial. It was time for an economic crusade. We took very difficult decisions, guided by a clear purpose to pull Pakistan out of economic crisis and put it back on a path of stability and gradual growth. We withdrew unsustainable subsidies. We initiated long-delayed privatization reforms. We restored fiscal discipline. We strengthened public financial management. These were long overdue structural reforms, not cosmetic fixes. They demanded difficult economic choices which were totally unavoidable. Today, the results speak for themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 2 years, Pakistan has made real, measurable progress. Inflation has fallen dramatically from 29.2% to 4.5%. Foreign exchange reserves have more than doubled from $9.2 billion to $21.2 billion. The current account has shifted from a $3.3 billion deficit to $1.9 billion surplus, and we moved from a primary deficit to a primary surplus. The fiscal deficit has also narrowed. The tax to GDP ratio has risen from around 8% to over 10%, yet still way behind tax to GDP ratio in the region. More than 1 million new taxpayers have entered the formal system. Tax collection grew by 26% in 2025. We have digitized government systems at scale. The e-procurement system, EPADS, now covers over 1,000 federal agencies and more than 500,000 contracts integrated in real time with FBR, NADRA and SECP. Recently, we successfully executed the privatization of Pakistan International Airlines and First Women Bank, steps long discussed but never delivered, and the process of privatization of other important state-owned enterprises are on the way, and the progress is satisfactory, and we shall achieve our targets with unwavering commitment in this behalf, God willing. Ladies and gentlemen, these achievements have been recognized internationally. Leading credit rating agencies, as we have just observed, Pakistan's improving outlook and reform momentum is, mashallah, progressing very well. With macroeconomic indicators now stabilized, our focus shifts to accelerating growth, expanding exports, and making Pakistan a far easier place to do business, for which we'll have to continue marching in unison with the unwavering commitment and dedication and never looking back. These economic governance reforms represent the next phase of Pakistan's reform journey, a shift from crisis management to institution building. It is an implementation-ready framework that translates our economic priorities into time-bound, measurable action. 142 reform actions, 59 priority reforms, 83 complementary actions, and 58 implementing institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, these reforms represent a continuum of progress, embedding stability into institutions, strengthening credibility, and enabling sustainable private sector-led growth. Alhamdulillah, we have traveled some distance on this long and arduous journey. The people of Pakistan have paid a very heavy price. We simply cannot return to business as usual, and we shall never look back, inshallah. We are going to rein in the excess and abuse that nearly brought down our economy and our financial system. That is our commitment to the people of Pakistan and to Pakistan's future. मैं आप सबका एक मरतबा फिर मैं शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहूँगा, और ये जो तरजीहात, ये जो रिफॉर्म्स हम इस 1.25 साल में लेके आए हैं, یہ کوئی آسان کام نہیں تھا. یہ ایک دہائیوں کا ایک لیفٹ اوور بزنس تھا جس کو مختلف حوالوں سے وہ تاخیر کے نظر رہے اور تاخیری حربے استعمال ہوتے رہے تاکہ بزنس ایز یوزول چلتا رہے اور پاکستان کی جو ترقی اور خوشحالی کا جو ایک منظر نامہ ہے وہ افق سے دور تر ہوتا چلا جائے بلکہ غائب ہو جائے. میں سمجھتا ہوں کہ آج الحمدللہ پہلی مرتبہ میں بلا خوف تردید یہ بات کہہ سکتا ہوں کہ ہم نے یہ ریفارمز جو ڈیپ روٹڈ اسٹرکچرل جو ہم نے چینجز جو تبدیلیاں ہم لے کے آئے ہیں یہ ایک ہمارا ہوم گرون ایجنڈا ہے. اس پہ ہم اپنے پاکستان کی بہترین مفاد پر ہم عمل پیرا ہوئے ہیں. انٹرنیشنل پارٹنرز کی ایڈوائس مشورے اس میں شامل ہیں لیکن یہ بنیادی طور پر ہمارا اپنا ایجنڈا ہے جس کے اوپر عمل کیے بغیر پاکستان ترقی اور خوشحالی کے راستے پر تیزی سے گامزن نہیں ہو سکتا. مثال کے طور پر اگر میں یہ کہوں کہ تاریخ میں پہلی مرتبہ جو ہماری جو FBR کی جو ڈیجیٹائزیشن کا جو پروگرام ہے وہ پہلی مرتبہ کاغذوں سے نکل کر وہ عملی طور پر اس کے اوپر کام ہوا تو یہ بات غلط نہیں ہے. اور اگر میں یہ کہوں کہ پہلی مرتبہ جو پروکیورمنٹ وہ سامنے عملی نمونہ وہ پیش کر رہی ہے تو یہ بات غلط نہیں ہے. اور اگر میں یہ کہوں کہ پہلی مرتبہ تھرو انفورسمنٹ اینڈ تھرو لیگل کورس عدالتوں میں جو دہائیوں سے کیسز لنگر آن ہو رہے تھے اور کلوژن کے ساتھ دہائیوں سے کیسز چل رہے تھے اربوں کھربوں روپے کے اس 1.5 سال میں چند سو ارب روپے وصول کیے گئے. انفورسمنٹ کے ذریعے چند سو ارب روپے وصول کیے گئے جو کہ شاید تاریخ میں پہلی مرتبہ ہے. لیکن میں اس کو کوئی کریڈٹ نہیں سمجھتا. یہ ایک ذمہ داری ہے میری آپ کی ہم سب کی. ہم قوم کے سامنے جواب دہ ہیں. ہم اللہ تعالیٰ کے سامنے جواب دہ ہیں کہ اگر یہ ذمہ داری ہمارے کاندھوں پر ہے تو اس کو اسی طرح نبھانا یہ ہم سب کی مشترکہ ذمہ داری ہے. میں ختاماً یہاں پر عرض کروں گا آپ سب نے بڑھ چڑھ کر اس کے لیے کام کیا ہے چاہے وہ ڈپٹی پرائم منسٹر ہیں چاہے وہ فنانس منسٹر ہیں چاہے وہ پلاننگ منسٹر ہیں یا اکنامک افیئرز ڈویژن کے منسٹر ہیں چاہے وہ ہماری دوسری اکنامک منسٹریز ہیں چاہے وہ ہمارے SIFC ہے اور FBR ہے لاء منسٹر ہیں اٹارنی جنرل ہیں اور دوسرے ادارے اور آفیسرز اور وزراء. میں آپ سب کا میں دل کی اتھاہ گہرائیوں سے شکر گزار ہوں کہ یہ ٹیم ورک کے بغیر یہ کام ممکن نہیں تھا. لیکن اس میں کسی کو کوئی شک نہیں رہنا چاہیے کہ یہ ایک بہت لمبا اور سخت سفر ہے. راستے میں سمندر نما چیلنجز کا سامنا ہوگا. اب تک ہم نے جس دل جمی کے ساتھ جس ان ویورنگ کمٹمنٹ کے ساتھ ہم نے ان چیلنجز کا مقابلہ کیا ہے اور اللہ تعالیٰ نے ہمیں کامیابیاں اپنی کمال مہربانی سے اور آپ کی محنت کی بدولت عطا فرمائی ہیں. اگر ہم اس راستے پر اسی مشن اسی کمٹمنٹ اور اسی شوق اور ذوق کے ساتھ ہم بڑھتے رہیں گے اور خون پسینہ بہائیں گے تو مجھے اللہ تعالیٰ کے ہاں پورا یقین کامل ہے کہ انشاءاللہ کامیابی آپ کے اس قوم کے قدم چومے گی. شرط یہ ہے کہ ہم شبانہ روز محنت کریں اور اگر تھک جائیں تو اور محنت کریں. آپ کا سب کا بہت بہت شکریہ. اور یہ ریفارم ایجنڈا اس کو ہمیں ہوم گرون ایجنڈا کہنا چاہیے جو کہ ہماری اپنی کاوشوں سے بصیرت سے اور ہمارے انٹرنیشنل پارٹنرز ان کی مشاورت سے ہم نے بنایا ہے. اس کو انشاءاللہ ہم تیزی سے آگے بڑھائیں گے. اللہ تعالیٰ ہم سب کا حامی ناصر ہو. پاکستان پائندہ باد.
ہر وقت بر وقت۔
وزیر اعظم پاکستان محمد شہباز شریف کی ہدایت پر فیڈرل بورڈ آف ریونیو نے درآمدات برآمدات اور ٹرانزٹ ریٹ کو مزید آسان کرنے کے لیے انقلابی اصلاحات متعارف کرا دیے ہیں۔ اب تاجر حضرات سمندر میں سفر کے دوران ہی تمام ضابطہ جاتی تقاضے بشمول کسٹمز کلیئرنس مکمل کر سکتے ہیں، وہ بھی بغیر کسی پیشگی ادائیگی کے۔
FBR نے جو پری کلیئرنس سسٹم متعارف کرایا، FTCCI اس کو اپریشیٹ کرتی ہے اور اس سے ہمارے اسٹوریج کے اخراجات میں بھی کمی واقع ہوگی اور ہماری جو انڈسٹری کو را مٹیریل کی بھی بر وقت فراہمی ممکن ہو سکے گی اور آسانی سے ہو سکے گی۔
نتیجہ پاکستان کی بندرگاہوں سے ڈائریکٹ پورٹ ڈیلیوری، ڈویل ٹائم، ڈیمریجز اور اضافی بندرگاہی اخراجات میں نمایاں کمی۔ تاجروں اور صنعتکاروں سے گزارش ہے کہ اپنی اشیاء کی پاکستان آمد سے قبل ہی گڈز ڈکلریشن فائل کریں اور بغیر تاخیر یا اضافی لاگت کے اپنی کنسائنمنٹس پورٹ سے کلیئر کروائیں۔ پاکستان کسٹمز بنا رہا ہے تجارت کو تیز تر، پاکستان کو مضبوط تر۔ حکومت پاکستان۔
درست ہر وقت بر وقت۔
دو ہزار 25 میں